Hey folks, welcome to G4G on YouTube. I'm Napalm Dawn, and this is now the third time I'm recording this video because my microphone settings keep getting set to something else. The first time Windows was set to the microphone on my Oculus Quest 2. The second time, even though Windows was set correctly, the GeForce Experience was using that microphone. So now it's the third time I'm doing this video. So I'm getting kind of used to this by now. Still might run a little long, but I'll try and go as quickly as I can. So, this is a video in the series that I like to do that compares Marvel Strike Force characters to their iterations in other games, usually basing things on Marvel Avengers Alliance and also Marvel Future Fight, maybe some references to some of the other games like Marvel Heroes and all, but it's pretty much MAA Marvel Future Fight since they offer fairly direct comparisons. So we're going to look at two mutants, Kitty Pryde and Iceman. We're going to look at Shatterstar and Longshot, and then we're also going to look at Yelena and Red Guardian. Warning, we're not going to deal with Longshot since he doesn't have representation in any other Marvel game. Strike Force is a bit of a trendsetter there. As you can see, the offer for Kitty Pryde's got about a day left, hour short of a day. She has that stupid, almost Bella Delphine face going on over here. You gotta wonder what Fox Next and Scopely's art team is thinking over the last year or so, with Emma Frost kind of looking like Jeffree Star, Stature having one eye aimed at the ground and the other eye aimed at the eye that's aimed at the ground. And even She-Hulk got some really negative comments when she was released. That is a little bit of a different topic that we're not going to get into, but Stature and Kitty Pryde, holy shit. You gotta wonder what they're doing. And the thing is, they don't carry that art into all of the game's representations of that character, but there's usually something that looks pretty bad. And in this case, it's the offer for Kitty Pryde where you just, she's omnipotent. She's looking in all directions at once. So, going over to the roster, we're first going to look at Kitty Pryde. She's represented in her classic X-Man uniform, or X-People as Deadpool would like to say, with the X belt buckle and the V outfit up top. Here it's a little more of like a black and yellow, although with the TV static over here it might potentially be blue. Her first ability is Shadowcat Strike, which does damage and clears positive effects. At the orange level, it will clear 2 positive effects. Lockheed Blast, which is the dragon that's on her shoulder, is not treated as a summon in this game, but rather a pirate asking a parrot to attack. It attacks all enemies. It applies offense down if they're not taunting. If they are taunting, it flips taunt to defense down. She fills her speed bar. It escalates the damage. More speed bar on taunt. Damage, more speed bar on taunt. Offense down for 2 turns. And then eventually at the orange level, major boost to damage and filling her speed bar if there was a taunter. This one, her abilities seem relatively orange worthy. Here, clearing 2 positive effects is really good. Here, a pretty good boost to her speed bar overall, so we're looking at a 20% boost to her speed bar, and removing that taunt, that's also relatively orange worthy. Mischievous Sprite, as you can see from the little thumbnail there, it kind of makes use of her phasing mechanic that she's known for. At level 2, you almost get an orange ability here where it applies Disrupted to the primary and adjacent targets, but if they're tech, it applies Disrupted for 2 turns. The reason why she has this is she has a little bit of backstory where she's known for being pretty much a genius when it comes to tinkering with tech It's one of the things that she's known for, but we've never seen really in the X-Men movies. And that right there is kind of the biggest thing in her escalation. At 7, it's just a damage boost, so that one's really not orange worthy. And then Untouchable again kind of goes on to her phasing mechanics. She gains a dodge chance in raids. She does defense up to herself or the most injured Astonishing X-Man. On enemy turn, 20% chance to apply evade to the most injured. She gains stealth. If Jubilee is an ally, so Jubilee confirmed, as if we didn't already have it confirmed, or an enemy misses, or an Astonishing X-Man dodges, she starts healing, which is very interesting. And then finally, she gains stealth for 2 turns, and she always applies the evade. So really, Mischievous Sprite is one of the only ones low down on the orange order. And I would say if you have the right team, Untouchable is pretty high. If not, probably Lockheed Blast will be the first, and then Shadowcat Strike. If we were to compare her to her iteration in Marvel Avengers Alliance, we're going to go ahead and take a look. So she was a infiltrator. She was one of the more original characters of the game. Similar style uniform, the V with the X-Man belt buckle. And then she had an alternate uniform called Shadowcat, where she was a scrapper and an infiltrator. Her bio says she's gifted with the mutant ability to phase material of her own body and other physical objects. Kitty Pryde can walk through walls or render her enemies' weapons useless. Her alternate names, Aerial Sprite and Shadowcat, are as mutable as her form. So again, they're going to make use of her phasing mechanic here, and since we don't have tooltips and Redux, we're going to go to the website. Her level 1 attack will phase her, and it was stealthy, even in her scrapper form. Sneak attack does deadly crit, so it does more damage when she crits, and it takes advantage of being phased. It will do more damage if she's phased when she does it. Shadow kick reduces defenses. It was actually a pretty solid attack. And then Call Lockheed was stealthy. It does not take her out of being phased. It was a summon attack, and you can see the graphics are pretty similar. So they definitely do have Lockheed's art down well. And one enemy would get burning. She has a passive of Lockheed where Lockheed has a chance to counter single target attacks. So if you attacked her with a single target, you had a chance of Lockheed firing off and causing burning. Her proc chance was buffed at one point from 10% to 30%. And she also had 2 E-ISOs. Lockdown, where she counters all attacks with Lockheed while not phased, so instead of a chance, she counters every time she's hit up to the max per round. And then Scalded E-ISO with Dragonfire, it procs up to 5 times. The reason why that's an ISO is because Heroic Age Iron Fist was countering so much for a period of time. The Playdom eventually considered it broken and limited the amount of times you could have extra attacks in a round. It was capped at 2 or 3, so that ISO essentially breaks the cap. And you can see here she was considered to be part of the X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy, believe it or not. In her Shadowcat uniform, she would start combat phased, allowing her to run sneak attack in the first round for really good damage, and strike from the shadows, where she counters all attacks for the first few rounds of combat. So you would lose one of the E-ISO slots, but you would kind of gain it back by having strike from the shadows over there. So now, going back to MSF, we're going to take a look at Iceman. So he's represented here as a little bit spiky, but not aggressively so. Pants, X-Man belt buckle. He is a mutant controller and a astonishing X-Man, which right now it's only him, Shadowcat, and Beast. We know Jubilee will be part of it. We're not really too sure who the fifth is going to be. Or if there's going to be two more and Beast is just there temporarily but not really designed for the team. Chilling Blast, he does a primary attack and adjacent targets for damage and slow, high focus, and it just escalates in damage, not really that orange-worthy. Freezing Impact, attack the primary target for damage if they're already slow. It crits and applies stun. Now you're going to see where this has been done before. It's called an escalating debuff. Marvel Avengers Alliance was really the first to do this with webbing and freezing attacks, where the first time they're hit with it, they get like a light level of the debuff. If it's not cleaned and then they take a second attack, it magnifies, and then generally by the third time they're hit with it, you would get a stun out of it. They did it with Spider-Man and a couple other characters in webbing, and they also did it with freezing and chill damage. Not really that orange-worthy because you're just escalating the damage. Everything occurs really at level 1 over here. Ice Slide. Bury yourself for 5% of the max health, attack all enemies, and apply 1 slow to each. Damage goes up, barrier goes up, and that's all you get here. Again, not really the most orange-worthy, other than the damage. I would have liked to have seen here at 6 or 7, 2 slows get applied, because then it allows him to combo off of himself a little bit more. Absolute Zero. If this character has 4 or more astonishing X-Men allies, and his health is full at the start of a match, in other words, heal him in raids, but he's good in PvP then, or just regular PvE. Revive once with 20% of the character's max health. On enemy slow, he gets a barrier, and he also decreases armor to people with slow. If that enemy has slow, attack that enemy. So that's good. That's interesting. In raids, lower the damage of enemies with slow. Bigger revives, chance of attack and piercing, and even more. This is really orange-worthy for him. It's huge. So you can see he definitely works off of slows. He has a revival mechanic built in. And we're going to see that they really took from Marvel Avengers Alliance on this. So here he was represented as being a little bit spikier, but not as much as Future Fight. We're going to take a look at that in just a few moments. A bit of a ice brief there, ice tighty whities. A little bit lighter blue, a little bit spikier, but the shoulders are kind of the same there. The hair is the same. He had Chill Out, Ice Capades, Cold Feet, and Breaking the Ice. So Chill Out did deadly crits, where it would do more damage when it would crit. It exploits chill. So if they were chilled, it does extra damage, kind of like what he's doing in Marvel Strike Force. Cold Snap, attacks against chill targets are guaranteed to crit. Again, sort of really taking advantage of somebody being chilled. Ice Capades was the big setup. It was his slide, like from the old Spider-Man TV show, where the slide was pretty much his major thing. He did do it in, I think it was one of the X-Men movies. He slid by Kitty Pryde and looked at her to see how she was doing. This is very iconic for Iceman. It's really hard to have Iceman without having the ice slide as part of it. So everybody gets chilled, and some people would get, or actually everybody gets disabled, where the next action is locked out for 2 rounds. This is something you can't do in Strike Force, and I'll tell you why. Your level 1 is always available to you. Other things have cooldowns. If, let's say, Iceman locked down another Iceman, and Chilling Blast gets locked out, essentially you would have nothing to do, the game would lock up. If Freezing Impact wasn't up, and Ice Slide wasn't up, and his level 1 gets locked out, you have no way around it because this game has no pass mechanic. Marvel Avengers Alliance did, so you would essentially be forced to pass if you had nothing else you could do in a round. So if Ice Capades was on cooldown, and Cold Feet was locked out, and Chill Out was locked out, and Breaking the Ice was on cooldown, you just passed. He had Cold Feet, where he did Chilled, Frozen, where you can't dodge, and Exhausted, which means you can't do quick actions. That's something we don't have in Strike Force. And then you had Breaking the Ice, where he would put a barrier around himself and he would gain Dead of Winter, which gives him the buff that says he revives. So you can see the revive mechanic is there. Also, really working off of the character being chilled. In Strike Force, we're calling it slowed. He had Absolute Zero, where his abilities would gain buffs if he was dead and revived. So killing Iceman was actually a little bit dangerous. He had an alternate uniform of Horseman of Death, thanks to Apocalypse, where he was a blaster and a bruiser instead of just being a bruiser. He gained some positives there, Death and Taxes being one of them. Has a chance to attack an enemy if they're chilled. Marvel Strike Force is doing that. And Reaper of Souls. Gains Dead of Winter when an enemy is defeated, so you don't have to use Dead of Winter yourself. Once you kill somebody, he automatically gains it. And his abilities become more aggressive and less defensive in his Horseman uniform, eventually shutting down healing with Despair, killing somebody outright if their health is low, stunning them, Brutal Strike. Damage can't be prevented by resurrection effects, so he becomes way, way more aggressive in this form. He became a little bit meta in his Horseman uniform as a blaster in PvP, especially when Beast was around, also Rogue in her Horseman uniform. But for the most part, Iceman really was never super meta anywhere. Kitty Pryde was in the beginning of Marvel Avengers Alliance thanks to a mechanic called Ghost Tanking. That's where you would set up your phased character to go ahead and tank, and they would dodge everything because they were phased, or what Strike Force would call invisible. They eventually fixed that because it was way too powerful to constantly have to wail on somebody who literally wasn't part of your reality. So now we're going to move on to Shatterstar, represented here with his Rob Layfieldian stupid boxing helmet, although not as bad in this game as he's represented elsewhere, and his dual twin blades. As you can see, he basically has shaving razors for swords and pouches because Rob Layfield. He has twin blades, which does damage and bonus attacks if Longshot is around. Cross Slash, which does defense down, gives energy to Longshot. Empathetic Onslaught, attacking the primary target, chaining. And he applies defense up to X Factor. And then his passive is Force of Will. If he or an ally crits, he barriers himself and X Factor allies. Everybody gains crit damage, all allies gain crit damage. So he actually works really well with Iceman, believe it or not. Over here, let's take a look at his abilities and his representation in MAA. So he occurred a little bit later, but not as late as Iceman. You sort of didn't really get the sense that he had twin blades at the time, but you can see it a little bit here at the tip of this sword. His helmet was a little bit worse, and he had like a little bit of a drape going on there with the shoulder that he doesn't have over here. He did Blade Maelstrom, Mojo Skewer, Vibro Shockwave, and Gladiatorial. He never got a uniform. His level 1 was kind of unique in that it was an AoE, so if he followed up on an attack or countered somebody, he would AoE the enemy team, so it's pretty good for damage. It was stealthy, it caused pain, which is basically an escalating damage debuff. He had Mojo Skewer, which attacked an enemy. It exploited shields. It gave them Tenderize, where slashing attacks did more damage. It also broke shields, what Marvel Strike Force would call barriers. Vibro Shockwave, which was not available in the first round. It did extra damage on crits. It exploited Taunters. It also exploited Tenderized. And then Gladiatorial Carnage, where it says in his next turn he takes 2 actions. So a typical thing would be Gladiatorial Carnage, round 1, hit them with Mojo Skewer in round 2, and then Vibro Shockwave in round 2, because it sets up the Tenderized, and then he exploits the Tenderized. He was often called Shatterstar, because he wasn't really that good. He was okay, and he got a little bit better when some ISO showed up for him. He would get a personal one called Warbringer, which would buff the team with War Frenzy, where attack and accuracy would go up. And he also had Painful Augmented ISO 8, which gave him Pain Train on the Blade Maelstrom, which basically escalated his pain debuff. So now here we can't really talk about Longshot because he doesn't exist anywhere else. So we're going to now talk about the Black Widow characters. And at this point, Marvel Avengers Alliance is done. Red Guardian and Yelena don't exist over there. So Yelena, Widow Strike, gains an assist from a random skilletary. If this character or an ally has stealth, she's got a chance to transfer positive effects except for taunt. Going Dark, again transferring positive effects. She gains stealth. Das Vidania, which Black Widow is known for saying in some games, and when Laura Bailey says it in Marvel's Avengers, it's horrible, because she does no accent for Black Widow throughout the entire game, but when she says Das Vidania, she does an accent. So you have primary and adjacent targets do damage, extra crit chance, and Red Room Graduate that Black Widow brings up in the MCU movies. On offense up, chance to gain stealth, lowering the chance for non-attack abilities to do assists on the enemy team, skilletary allies, and we have essentially what is her snowsuit from the movie. Bump that up while I'm here. And then we have Red Guardian represented in his movie look and also with the dad bod. We'll be talking about that in a moment. He has Soviet Slam, where he attacks the primary target and he chains. He gains defense up and assist from Yelena. He's really being called kind of the best tank right now, along with Strife and Captain America. The fact that he spawns with a taunt is really good. We only really deal with that in Drax. Iron Curtain, he clears a negative effect. If he's low health, he heals, and he gets rid of his taunt. So he's very self-preserving. He will apply regeneration to himself and skilletary. He'll get Yelena. Red Star, transferring positive effects to skilletary. Chance to apply ability block, which is really cool. And Yelena again for the assist. And Maskarovica. On spawn, he gains a taunt and defense up, which is really nice. When he drops below max health at 50%, if he's taunting, he clears it and he heals. gain block chance per skill, and then also skilletary bonuses again. Now, for comparisons, we have to go over to Future Fight, but first, we'll look at Kitty Pryde in Future Fight. She's represented as a slightly older Kitty Pryde, and you can see that in her skills because she's called Head Mistress Pryde, where she gives mutants a bonus to their attack. Kitty Spin Kick with bleeds and stuns, stuns and fears, a decrease in defenses, bleed damage, a accumulation of damage done to her that goes into her own attack, Heartbreaker, which does bleeds and stuns and fears, Dance of Destruction, which is bleeds again and her attack goes up, Lockheed's Helping Hand, where she summons a clone of herself really to represent Lockheed, and a tier 2 of Untouchable Shadow, where her crit and her dodge goes up. She's represented as the Kitty Pryde that was trained by Logan in martial arts because she has the katanas, and that's why she's causing the bleeds. So they don't really go into kind of her phasing mechanic here other than her dodge chance. They're going with the post-Logan training, really. We were to take a look at Iceman, very, very spiky in his representation. By the way, Kitty Pryde has no alternate uniforms. Very spiky, no pants or shorts. He does have an alternate uniform called X-Man Blue, where he has the uniform and his attack and defenses go up. When he does a freeze skill, critical damage goes up. So again, extra damage when somebody's frozen. Ice Pillar, a stun, chill damage, Snowflake with a freeze, Frozen Spike with bleed damage, and he goes immune to damage. Icicle Rain, stun and freeze, his attacks go up. Frigid Giant, chill, stun, freeze, invincible. 40% chance to become immune to cold damage. You would really think Iceman would be totally immune to cold damage, but okay. A tier 2 of increasing all of his debuffs and skill damage, and a passive of decreasing skill cooldowns for allies. Neither Kitty Pryde nor Iceman are particularly meta in Marvel Future Fight. Looking at Yelena, we will see that she comes in a classic look to her, with the Black Widow belt buckle. This is kind of her comic look, and then she has 2 movie looks, her standard uniform with the black and the ponytail, and then the snowsuit, which is what we see her as over here in Strike Force. Seems to be rebooting itself, unfortunately. So gun-based with a rocket launcher attack. Tonfas that act as chains. A little bit of shock damage into an AK-47. So here, bazooka launch, burns and bleeds and stuns. Chain staff with a stun. Aerial explosion with burn damage and her attacks go up. Pale spider bite, bleed, and shock. Electro flare, snipe, burn, shock, paralysis. Where they can't move. Another true damage up attack. Stealth technology, dodge rate is up. Tier 2 of target removal, dodge rate up, and skill damage up. And then a passive of all speeds for her allies. Yelena, unlike anybody else we've really talked about so far, is actually fairly meta in the speed category within Marvel Future Fight. She's good for that category. And then finally Red Guardian, because we don't have a Shatterstar in Marvel Future Fight. Here is his classic representation. Very Captain America look with a little bit of a mohawk over there. And then he has a movie uniform, but he doesn't have the dad bod, which is really interesting because Marvel Future Fight does give you dad bod Thor from Endgame. And actually Future Fight was praised for doing that and not doing the standard thing of like, oh, we don't like our characters to be out of shape, even if it is an unrealistic representation of them. So it was praised when it was done with Thor, but yet it went completely unnoticed with Red Guardian, believe it or not. And we want to go back over to Strike Force here to do a direct comparison of the uniform, and then we'll wrap up the video. Not really too sure why it's rebooting itself over here, considering any of the other times I've done this video, it's stayed up perfectly fine. While it's rebooting over here, I want to say that I feel like Iceman, until he gets going for some of his skills, I feel like he's going to need a little bit of help with slow from other people, and I kind of feel like Ant-Man is going to work out really well with him, and actually Cyclops will probably also work out really well with Iceman, to be honest, until he gets a really solid Astonishing X-Man team. So looking at Red Guardian, as you can see, very leathery in cloth. The star is a little bland, and he has the dad bod, but if you look at Future Fight, the star is considerably more ornate, the uniform is way more ornate, and tactical looking, sort of like a Winter Soldier Captain America uniform. And, you know, he's physically fit, but he still has the beard and everything, so they're both based off of the movie. They just take a considerably different tact on it. Here he looks more maniacal and Charles Manson-ish. Here he just kind of looks like he's ready to storm the Capitol of the United States. The shield is way better looking. I like the uniform a lot better here. As for his skills, Shield Blow, Shield Edge Strike, pretty vanilla, Slam of Fury, immunity to damage, Justice Blow, ignores immunity and decreases defenses, Guardian Shatter, ignores dodge rate, has a chance to penetrate barriers and everything, Red Shield, his armor and defense is up. We have an awakening of burn damage, shock damage, stun, invincible for him, so it's pretty key. Guardian's Roar, dodge rate is up, skill damage is up, and a passive of villain allies get a increase to their hit points. So overall, out of the games that we've looked at, I'd say Red Guardian probably wins in Marvel Strike Force because of the spawn on taunt, and these abilities make him sound a little bit meta in Future Fight, but really they're not. Not until you get the awakening, and even still he's not really meta. The synergy Yelena has with Red Guardian here probably gives the win over to Strike Force for where she's stronger. But by herself, she is meta here in Future Fight, so overall I would say she probably wins in Future Fight. When it comes to the mutants, Marvel Future Fight has no winners there. When it comes to Kitty Pryde and Iceman, they're just not meta at all. So that leaves just comparing MAA and MSF, and I would believe that Iceman was probably stronger in his Apocalypse Deathman. His Apocalypse Death uniform as a blaster in Marvel Avengers Alliance, he was stronger there. He was actually really tough to deal with. Kitty Pryde was very good early on during ghost tanking, but when ghost tanking was nerfed, Kitty Pryde really didn't do much at all in the game at that point, even with the later ISOs. So I'd probably say she's going to be stronger here in Marvel Strike Force. And Shatterstar, he wasn't called Shatterstar for a reason, or for no reason really, in Marvel Avengers Alliance. He just was really outclassed as a scrapper and not particularly that good. I would say he's going to be stronger in Strike Force once we get a full-on X-Factor team, and if you have Longshot. and the two of them are buffing each other. So that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry it took so long to produce. I had to record it 3 different times. What do you guys think? Where do you think each one of these characters was at their strongest? What about taking into account Marvel Heroes, which did have Kitty Pryde and Iceman? I did play Kitty Pryde and I really liked her, but I never played Iceman in Marvel Heroes. And to me, one of my biggest representations of Iceman was him in the Marvel vs. Capcom games. Whether it was X-Men Children of the Atom, or X-Men vs. Street Fighter, X-Men vs. Capcom, that's really where I had a lot of my visuals for Iceman kind of get formulated. So when he first showed up in MAA, I did get the slide represented from the cartoons, but I really kind of didn't get like the wall effect, like an ice wall in front of him. He would do that in the arcade games a little bit. Also, the arcade had a little bit of a foot slide on a low diagonal kick attack, which was pretty cool. But he had an ultimate in a Blizzard, and none of the games have really ever given him a true Blizzard attack, at least not in the way the arcade games did. He does have one attack here in Future Fight that's somewhat similar to it. It's that, but it's still not like how it was in the arcade, where he would lean back and the chunks of ice would fill the screen coming out of his chest and everything. This is somewhat like his ice beam. And a little bit of a wall there, but not really a protective wall. It's just kind of an after effect of one of his abilities. So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys later. Have a good one.